I wanted to create this video for people who are thinking about doing Kilimanjaro and all of the things I kind of wish I knew beforehand and did research on, just to make my trip and experience that much better. The first thing to think about is making sure that you research the company that you want to do your summit with. I didn't, which was a mistake. Long story short, it was a trip hosted by a content creator, and I just kind of trusted the content creator, which is not a very good thing, which will lead to a later point later on in this video. These are a few things that I think you should look for in a company that you're looking to summit Kilimanjaro with. The first thing is if they have a TANPA licensing. So basically this means that they have the Tanzania National Park Authority. I guess they're registered as that as a guide. The second thing I think is really important to check is if the company has something called the Wilderness First Responder. So this is basically a qualification to ensure that the guys that you're with understand how to tackle any issues with high altitude. Another thing is high altitude safety training, as mentioned before. And then also, it's very important to check if the company has something called a KPAP. KPAP is a Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. So this is to ensure that all of the porters and people and guides and anyone that's kind of involved in the company that you're choosing to summit Kilimanjaro with, they have rights. And then also, if people are curious, it's also good to check in with the company what the success rate is with summiting the specific routes that they have. Next thing, I went to do the Kilimanjaro trip as part of a content creator hosting trip. Now, after this Kilimanjaro trip, this is something I'm really making sure to not probably do again, or really make sure to research. There's a few reasons for this. It should be really clear what their role is. If they're just there to content create and then just get a free experience because your community is the one like kind of paying for you to be able to go for free, then that's like one thing. And then I know from my perspective, okay, you're just part of the group, so there's no expectation. But I think because the expectation wasn't very clear, people were making their own assumptions. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, well, you're aware of like the company and the ins and outs of what's going on and all those things, right? Because if people are trusting to go on a really potentially dangerous trip with you, then you should know like the ins and outs of what's going on. If that's not the case, like you have to make that very clear that people can do their own research and preparation for that. If you are someone that's thinking about going on a trip that's being hosted by a content creator that you follow and you might like, I think it's really important to ask them directly, like, what is the demographic of the people that go? Like if I asked directly point blank, I think I would have seen like the dynamics and all those things beforehand. They probably would have said, yep, you know, it's like Gen Z, but on the younger end, like early 20s. And I would have been like, oh, okay, bet like this probably isn't going to be a community for me. Another thing I think is really important to think about if you are attempting to do Kilimanjaro is to make sure you understand altitude sickness and all the symptoms and all the signs, just to make sure that you're able to advocate for yourself. So I didn't really understand the various different types of altitude sickness and high altitude symptoms you can have. I was having lung issues, which is really serious, and I think if anyone's having lung or brain issues, I just feel like common sense will tell you like get them off the mountain ASAP. But with the guys that I had, they weren't doing that for whatever reason. I had to really advocate for myself, which is a bit disappointing. Now, the lung infection, that was quite serious. What I ended up having, the symptoms actually mirror altitude sickness a lot, which is even more concerning to why I wasn't like immediately off the mountain. But I was off the mountain, but the way it was handled just was not ideal, and actually probably made my condition even worse. I was having people tell me, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. If this was so normal, why am I the only one out of the whole entire group that ended up having to spend days in hospital if it was normal? Do you see what I mean? So it's really important to know your symptoms so you can really advocate for yourself. And lastly, preparation. So if you are thinking about Kilimanjaro and all the things about preparation, if I'm being brutally honest, there were people in my group that like properly trained for it and were able to summit. There were people that didn't really train for it and they were able to summit. I didn't do anything really intensive. I just stuck to my regular workout routine. I would do spin class twice a week, yoga twice a week, strength training twice a week, and then once a month I'm doing like a long hike maybe, but I tend to do like a long walk once. Like I really didn't do anything specifically to train for Kilimanjaro. I just did what I normally do with my physical workouts. And it's important to work on your whole body as well, because when you're carrying those rucksacks, you need that back strength, you need the core strength, you need the shoulder strength and all that kind of stuff. It's not just purely legs. So I think the way I trained worked well for me. You might find a way that works well for you. But if I'm being honest, yeah, unless you're getting like lung infections and altitude, those things you can't really prepare for. But I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and I feel so privileged to be able to do something like Kilimanjaro. I know it's a bucket list dream for a lot of people, so I feel really blessed to do that. But trust and believe, I am not doing anything like that again.